Welcome to the Cannon Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Darius, and today we are joined by 2016 National Basketball Coach of the Year, Steve Baik. Coach, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure.
All right, let's just jump right into it. Where are you from, Coach?
From Temple City, California, around Pasadena, San Gabriel Valley, and kind of grew up around East LA, Monterey Park, in my early years, and moved over to Temple City and went to Arcadia High School.
Okay, so you kind of just been born and raised out in California.
I was actually born in Seoul, Korea, and when I was a year old, my parents moved us out to LA, and been here ever since. So it's been a long time.
So growing up, what went into getting into basketball? Was it family? Was it just friends?
Yeah, I love sports. I love soccer. Soccer, tennis, baseball were my first loves. And the way I got into basketball was my dad took us to Costco, and we didn't have much money at the time, and my younger sister, wanted to get a Cabbage Patch doll, and my dad for some reason had this idea of me getting a basketball, and he decided for us, and I got the basketball, and so from that moment on, I literally took that basketball to the neighborhood school and just played literally every single day.
So kind of just like love at first sight. I mean, you started playing and you're like, oh, I'm good at this.
It was somewhat, I just love being active and, playing sports, and I was just naturally competitive. So my first instance, I didn't really like it because I played when I was maybe like 5 or 6, and I jammed my finger, and I was like, I'd rather kick the ball, and so just the competitive environment that I was in, when you go out, you play with other kids, and a lot of pickup basketball back then, so I just fell in love with the competition.
So competitive, like edge and nature, did that come from just growing up with your family, or is that just something you developed by yourself?
I think it was innate. I just always was this guy that I was always defensive for some reason. I was always defensive. So, when I was early on, a lot of Asian Americans, just like myself, probably, experienced a lot of, racism. And so because of that, I just was always defensive. So when you told me I couldn't do something, I'm going to turn right back and say I am going to do it, and I'm going to prove it, So a lot of sports was my outlet to get some of that energy out. And so it ended up being a positive thing for me.
Okay, so outlet. That's true for a lot of athletes. It turns into an outlet. So going into high school, talk about that playing career, because obviously you had some success there.
Yeah, no, I think my competitive nature allowed me to be really successful as a basketball player, and I think I could have been successful in soccer, tennis, whatever it was. I used to just love tennis, and Michael Chang was my hero back in the day, and he was a Chinese American that was successful, and I just realized, okay, at that moment, I was playing basketball, baseball, and I thought, okay, tennis would be my best option to be the most successful. And I remember when I was around 7th, 8th grade, and I was pretty good, and I just realized, you know what, I think I love basketball more. And I said, man, I'm just going to go full force. I quit tennis and literally just walked over to the neighborhood basketball court and started playing. And just the fact that I was competitive and did not like being second best, I just found ways to, win. And if there were weaknesses in my game, I couldn't tolerate it. So I just, I had to figure out a way to make weaknesses into strengths. It was just kind of this weird thing where maybe it was OCD. I don't know what it was. I just could not let weaknesses linger,
And so talk about a little bit more just kind of the actual high school experience.
Yep.
And, kind of, starting to get looks and then, transitioning into college athletics.
Yeah, so I only played 1 year of organized basketball in 8th grade. So everything
really?
else was literally on the blacktop, And I think that was a benefit, And so when I got to playing in the gym, I never took it for granted. I thought it was just like an unbelievable opportunity. And I didn't play in the best league, youth league, but it was an opportunity, you know. And so when I got to high school, my high school started at 10th grade. So I just remember as a sophomore, I was basically treated like a freshman. And I was just allowed to play defense against the varsity team. So I made the most of literally every single opportunity. And I just remember frustrating the point guard, the senior point guard, because I would not allow him to get started in the offense. And I just remember these battles every single day, just frustrating him. And I took that was my one chance. And you know, for me, that served me well for my, you know, future playing career and my coaching career too. So going into college, what was that? You know, what was that like? What got you into like actually playing at the college level? Yeah, so was it a coach or? For me, it was more advocating for myself. I was good locally. You know, I went to these club events, and Slam and Jam was the big thing back then. So I got to play some kids from LA, Dominguez, and Compton, and I knew I was good. You know, and so when I got back to my high school, that gave me a lot of confidence to really pursue trying to play at the next level. So I wanted to play, you know, in the NBA. And so locally, I ended up being really good, first team, all area type of stuff. I didn't feel like I was given the proper support in, you know, getting to the next level. My high school coach thought Division III was the best case scenario for me. But when I was a senior, there was a junior college coach that was probably, you know, one of the best coaches, you know, in that area for a long period of time. And he guaranteed me a Division I scholarship if I went to PCC, Pasadena City College. You know, looking back, I kind of wish I would have taken that route. Mm-hmm. But I chose to go to Westmont College, which was in Santa Barbara. So you can't beat that in, you know, the education and just going. The biggest decision was when I went to a game there and I saw the atmosphere. Everybody went to these basketball games, so it was a big deal. And these rivalries and if you watch a small college game, especially back then, it was really competitive, well coached, a great atmosphere. And then I thought to myself, okay, if I go to PCC, best case scenario, if I go to like a Cal State Northridge, which I attended a game, and you know, it's kind of a commuter school, and people don't go to those games. Really? And so I just thought, okay, well, you know, I'd rather go for the experience as opposed to, you know, the level.
And then maybe you made the right choice.
Yeah.
You know, and now being on that like smaller campus, was there a lot of like recognition and love sent your way for being on the basketball team?
Yeah, you know, everybody knew each other. You know, it was a small college, like 1,200, you know, students, and so most likely you were playing a sport. You know what I mean? There, so everybody kind of just supported each other, and it was a great environment where, you know, coaching was great, teammates were great, lifelong friends, and you know, like I said, just a great environment.
You know, after you wrap up, now you dip your toes a little bit in professionally, right? In the Korean League. Do you mind sharing that experience?
Yeah, so when I realized I wasn't going to make it to the NBA, I thought the next best, you know, situation would be, you know, playing overseas professionally. So when I was at Westmont, we had this guy named John Korfis. He was a Greek citizen, but played his college basketball at USC. And at that time, he was playing with Dominique Wilkins. And so it was a big deal, you know, overseas ball in Greece. And so when he'd come over in the summer during his, you know, off season, and we would compete, I thought I more than held my own against him. And he encouraged me as well, you know, to keep at it, you know. And so during my sophomore year, there was an agent that came to watch a game, and he represented, you know, players and sent them over to the KBL, the Korean Basketball League. And obviously it's somewhat unusual to see a Korean American playing college basketball. And so he approached me and asked what my goals were, and I said, you know, it'd be to play in the KBL. And so he said, you know, you're off to a great start, and all you got to do is just finish out your career at Westmont and let's talk. And so that's what happened. We talked. I actually worked with another agent that put me in touch with a professional team from Korea. They came out. They came to scout, and I got invited to their training camp and did really well. They wanted to draft me. Because I was born there, I thought that there would be no hiccups as far as, my transition. But KBL was the only pro league that didn't allow, even if I was born there and I had a U.S. citizenship, I wouldn't be allowed to play as a local. And so that meant I would have to give up my U.S. citizenship, which, I was willing to do. But the problem with being a Korean citizen is there's a mandatory 2-year military service.
Wow.
So that unfortunately ended my playing career.
So very quick.
Yeah.
Any success over there? I mean,
Yeah, they wanted me to stick around. I went to Korea and I continued to practice with the team, and they were looking for any loophole, and they wanted me to somehow, stay involved with the team and see if the rules would change. And, for me, I just always had this, I knew what my plans were. It was to play professionally, and as soon as my playing career was done, I would go right into coaching. And so immediately I just thought, well, at least I have a great backup plan that I can go to, right? But looking back, if I were to do it again, I don't want to live life with regrets, but I kind of wish I would have pursued other, overseas professional options.
Probably could have, but I mean, like you said, coaching is a great option. Now, I know you said for a while that was your plan. Was that from like an earlier age or later in your playing career you realized, okay, coaching's probably more my thing?
I just knew coaching was going to be something I loved, because when I was a high school player, I was asked to volunteer and help with the youth camps in the summer. And so I would do that every year from 16 years old till, now. I've been, every summer I've been, doing basketball camps. And that's something that I fell in love with immediately, helping kids, and there wasn't a better option. That's something that I just will always do. I just love, helping the youth. And obviously it involves something that we're all passionate about, which is the sport of basketball. So that's kind of how, coaching started for me.
Okay, and now, so actually hopping into the actual coaching carousel, let's talk about the early days, and we can kind of lead up all the way to the, the Chino Hills day, and we'll dive a little deeper into that.
Yeah, absolutely. So coaching, after college, my college roommate, he lived up in NorCal, and he got a job at a brand new school called Hercules High School in the East Bay. And so right after college, after pursuing my basketball career, that, not having a future in that route, I went to go I moved in with my buddy up in NorCal, and so we taught together, we coached at Hercules together, and it just, it was a great experience, new kids, new community, and, we endured a lot of struggles, nothing was easy, and, from that moment I came back to move home and pursue my teaching credential. And so my high school coach asked me, if I wanted to come volunteer and coach. And he actually got me my first teaching job down in SoCal at John Muir High School.
And at John Muir, do you mind talking about that process? And then also you ended up at Arcadia, right?
Yeah. And so John Muir was a school that was in my my league, my high school league. And, there's a lot of history, a lot of, legends that came from John Muir, Jackie Robinson, Stacey Augman, and one of my favorite point guards, Jacques Vaughn. And so I always had a love for that school, and so when my high school coach moved there to, teach and coach, he told me during that process that, at some point he'd want to hand me the job, and so I thought I was going to be there for the rest of my life. And, we had a lot of talent. We had, kids that were just great, community kids that, that worked hard. And so the only job I could potentially get as a teacher was in special ed. And it was brutal. It was really, really brutal in that, you know, here I am as an inexperienced teacher, and unfortunately I didn't have any resources. I literally was put into the classroom and they said, figure it out. Wow. And so, you know, I have a lot of stories there, but from there, you know, I learned a lot, you know, and I paid my dues. And my high school principal found out that I was at John Muir, and he asked, you know, is your goal to be a varsity, you know, coach one day? And I said, yes. And so he said, why not come on over, you know, back to Arcadia? And I made that decision because the teaching credential program that I was at was literally right next to the school. I knew that I would be able to become a high school varsity coach a lot faster that route as well. So that's what I did. I went there, assisted for a year, and was the head coach for 3 years.
All right, and now let's jump into like the Chino Hills days. Obviously, that's going to be probably a big segment of this podcast because there's a lot of success stories with that. What led to you transitioning to Chino Hills in the first place?
Another funny story. That same high school coach left John Muir and went to Chino Hills. And so when I was at Arcadia, he was coaching at Chino Hills. And he just said, this is an amazing community. They love and support their athletics. And there's a lot of, you know, talented kids out this way. So I asked, you know, just recognizing the situation that I had at Arcadia, the emphasis was more in academics and the arts, and athletics weren't as prioritized. And so kind of got burnt out being at Arcadia and took a chance at Chino Hills. And so when I got there, I immediately just fell in love with the community, the school. You know, like I said, pro sports, academics were great, a lot of school spirit. And I was never, I never saw a community like that ever. And so it was just really exciting for me to be a part of that. And I assisted for 3 years. And after being an assistant, the head coach asked if we could flip-flop roles and me take over as the head coach. And so after 3 years, I became the head coach of Chino Hills, and we had a lot of local success, made it to the CIF semis. We won league pretty much every year. We had kids go to Division I schools, and it was a lot of fun. And then, obviously, I'm wondering, when did the Ball brothers, you know?
When did the Ball brothers show up? My very next question.
Yeah. So the Ball brothers, actually, the Ball family, it was really cool. It was either my first or second year being an assistant at Chino Hills. I was given the opportunity to run my own basketball camps. And so as soon as I put one on, I see this family of 3 boys, you know, in line to sign up for the camp. And I meet LeVar and Tina. Mm-hmm. And, you know, they introduced me to the boys. And immediately, you know, the boys obviously were the best players in the camp. They just did they were just the best, you know. And there was a point in that first day where Lonzo got a rebound, and he was in 6th grade at the time. LiAngelo was 5th, and then LaMelo was in 2nd grade. And so I see Lonzo get a rebound, and he literally throws a full court pass, one bounce right into the hands of his teammate, layup. And in that moment, I just thought to myself, okay, LeVar's 6'6", Tina's 6'1". If this kid ends up being at least 6'6", which most likely he is going to be, immediately I told myself this kid's going to be in the NBA. You know, in that moment as a 6th grader. And so, you know, prior to then, I never, you know, was involved with, you know, helping produce an NBA talent. But
some
in that
D1,
moment,
but not NBA.
Yeah. In that moment, I was thinking to myself, if there's ever going to be an opportunity to coach an NBA kid, I think this is the one.
Wow. I mean, so you caught it from age 11.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Now they actually so you met them there.
Yep.
Was there like a kind of like hey, come to Chino, or were they already going to Chino?
They were already going to Chino. They
lined up perfectly.
You know, they literally lived up the street, and LeVar. You know, I believed him. I knew that the family was different because, you know, back then, especially, if you were good, you were going to either go to Etiwanda or Mater Dei. And he said something that was interesting. He said, you know what, you know, all these players go to make a name for themselves by going to Mater Deis and, you know, all these big name schools. He said, we're going to make the school a big name. You know, the players should be the ones that make the school a big name. And so when he said that, I didn't think of it as an arrogant thing. I just saw the truth to that. You know, players are the ones that are going to make the program successful, or, you know, or not. You know, and so when he said that, I knew that they were in it for the long run or the long haul, and knew that there weren't going to be any, you know, transferring or, you know, different things like that. So I just thought that, you know, okay, here's my point guard of the future in 2-3 years, you know, and so I literally couldn't wait for that day.
So he steps on campus. Do you mind talking about kind of like the change he brings in? I mean, I know you guys already had a good program going, but do you mind talking about, because obviously he helps take you guys to the next level. Yeah. I don't know whether it's his energy, his aura, or just his playing abilities. Yeah. What changes?
That's a great question. I mean, I think we are going to do, you know, a documentary movie about this whole, you know, run, because there are these like stories within the story that make it so special, right? So in the spring, you know, we're in this local league, and some of our best players aren't playing, you know, and we're looking for, this is Lonzo's 8th grade year, and soon to be a freshman, high school freshman. And so in that spring league, we're losing every single game. You know, our starting point guard decides to go play football for the first time in his career. And, you know, we have other kids that are injured, you know, what have you. And so we're literally losing every single game. And the day of Lonzo's 8th grade graduation, after he graduates, he literally comes to practice the next day, an hour and a half before practice starts. And he's in the gym shooting an hour and a half before. And, you know, people are asking me, hey, what are you going to do with this guy? You know, there's a lot of hype already. And I'm asking, like, you know, people, you know, my college, you know, peers, coaching mentors, what should I do with them? Everybody says, he's got to earn his minutes. You know, he's got to earn his spot. Mm-hmm. And so I said, all right, you know, I'll take, you know, what you say. And so the first summer league game, I have to start him, because first off, he's the only one that's been at practice on time or before practice, and he's proved that he's earned it. And the first game he's back, we win by 20. Like, you know, it's different. Immediately there's a big shift. And you know, you could see it in practice as well, where there's these seniors that obviously don't want to give up their spot. And this kid, Lonzo, is literally outplaying everyone, making us better from the second he steps on, you know, campus. And in my opinion, you know, he earned it. And so he was a starter literally from day one.
I mean, yeah, super talent in the NBA, like you said, and proved himself day one.
Yep.
I mean, coming an hour and a half early, like you hear that from, like, you know, the older kids or maybe like professionals, obviously, but a 9th grade kid, 14 years old.
Right.
Now, going forward, you guys, is it 2016? Is that his senior year?
Yeah.
Okay, so going into his senior year, you at this point you have all 3 Ball brothers are on the team.
Yep.
LaMelo is a freshman.
Yep.
It's a national championship. I mean, it's a ton of stories. You win National Coach of the Year. You coach on the Balls Life All-American team.
Right.
It's beginning to end. I mean, as much as you can tell,
yeah.
I mean, about that whole experience, getting to coach 3 players who are obviously fantastic, LaMelo and Lonzo especially.
Yep.
You're another NBA player on the team.
Onyeka,
yeah. So just any stories, of course.
I think the biggest one was, you know, before we even started the season, we knew we were going to be good. And even, I want to take it back just, you know, to Lonzo's junior year. That year, we were supposed to also have a really, really good year, and we run into a lot of adversity. One, Onyeka's older brother, Nnamdi, died tragically in an accident, and it was something that really impacted the community, and it really impacted his teammates. Lonzo and Nnamdi were like best friends. All his brothers were best friends with Nnamdi, and so we basically dedicated that year to Nnamdi, and we literally hung a jersey on the chair, his jersey on the chair the whole season, and we make it to the state championship, and we end up losing this weird game against San Ramon Valley. Lonzo fouls out with like 3 minutes left, and he has 30 points with 3 minutes left, and it's just this weird game where we go into double overtime. We end up losing a game that we should have won, and so we have a whole year to really think about that, a whole summer to let that just sit, and it was the worst feeling ever because number one, we all dedicated that season to Nnamdi, and we wanted him to, we wanted to honor him, and the kids took it personal, not because it's just a loss, but because they wanted to honor their brother. And so as soon as, we go through the whole process of losing him, the next year we get Onyeka as an incoming freshman. And Onyeka, was really talented, but he was a freshman. He still needed to grow into his body. And so we had a 6'9" senior that tore his ACL. He was the projected starter. Great kid, strong, athletic, did everything possible to earn that position. His career ends with that, torn ACL. Then we have another 6'7" senior forward that was a part of our program. We ended up, removing him from the team. And so we're literally a week away from going to the city of Palm. And the reason why I say that is because that city of Palm was planned specifically to try to be number one in the nation. So we knew we were going to be good. But when we were invited, they told us that we would have a good an incentive was you would play against Montverde, and you would have a chance to be number one in the nation. And so obviously, I took that to the team, and I said, hey, we could stay local, and we could just makeshift our schedule, and we could have a great undefeated year and kind of just, say that we're number one. Or do we want to go, play the number one team in the nation? And they all said yes, and I knew we were going to go regardless.
Of course.
So we end up going, and Onyeka, literally a week before, we end up, losing our 6'7" forward, and Onyeka's the next guy up as a freshman. And he literally, long story short, redeems that prior year and really just redeems, it was just an unbelievable redemptive story of losing Nnamdi and him coming into that position and filling that void and helping us win not only that tournament, but a national championship. Everybody definitely credits the Ball brothers, but people like Onyeka, people like Eli, people, that were on the bench, they all, were a huge factor.
The coach.
I was very privileged to be a part of that,
Now, another thing, so talk about actually leading into Mount Verde, getting that win. What did that mean to you and your squad?
Gosh, man,
because most people were thinking Mount Verde, were they? Yeah,
they were, and we were playing Jefferson of New York, and there was a kid named Shamari Pons, who was this New York point guard, a typical New York point guard that could just get to the cup, score, and unbelievable player, and so they matched us up because they knew that it was a similar style game where we both played fast. So that game was really frustrating because we had all of our forwards foul out, and we almost lose that game. Jeez. And
you're already short because of the injuries, and
and so Lonzo has to play center, and we literally end up winning by 1, and he blocks 2 shots at the end of the game to win that game for us, you know. And so there was a good chance that we'd never even show up to that Montverde game, you know. And so that's a story in itself, you know. And so we get past, you know, Jefferson, and we end up getting ready to play Montverde, and literally everything just comes into that moment. And even me as a person, as an individual, I'm like, you know, here I am, an immigrant, and what did I do to deserve being in this position, you know? And I'm telling my players in the pregame, you know, you're a little-known public school in Chino Hills. What are you guys doing in this position, you know? And so immediately I think this isn't coincidence. We're meant to be here. And not only are we meant to be here, we're going to win this damn game, you know? And it just the stories behind, you know, the story, you know, from the pregame to the introduction. We were ranked number 7 at the beginning of the year for some reason. And then we win our first tournament, and then here we are, we beat Jefferson, and we're literally in the second week of our season. And they say USA Today ranks Montverde obviously number 1, but then they ranked us number 2. I said, when did that happen? And, you know, things like, you know, in the newspaper matching us up as David versus Goliath. There were literally headlines that said David versus Goliath, you know. And so, you know, we go into this game, and, you know, I'm just emotional. Like, this is the biggest game of my career. This is the biggest game of all of our, you know, careers. And so this is our one chance to be number 1 in the nation. How many times do people get that, you know? And so we huddle them up, and I'm yelling at our kids, we're not here to watch. We're not here to watch, you know. And then I bring them in one more time, and I'm yelling, let's go, you know. And this environment is crazy. Standing room only, packed gym. It's awesome venue and awesome environment. And LaMelo, as a 13-year-old who should be in 8th grade, looks back at me and he's like, man, I love Coach, man. You know, and he just jogs off, you know, to the tip-off. And I'm like thinking to myself in that moment, this kid is unbelievable. Like, this kid has no nerves as a 13-year-old. And in that moment, I'm like, we're good.
Was there, like, the same, like, you know, when it dawned on you that Lonzo, like, at the age of 11, he can go to the NBA? Was it similar with LaMelo? Was he a little bit behind? Or
no,
was it just like
it was very similar. I mean, LaMelo, in many ways, got to experience more at an earlier age, you know. And as a 13-year-old, you're playing against, like, 3-4 McDonald's All-Americans, 10 Division I guys, a chance to play number 1, you know. Like, he looked out of place, you know, being a 5'10", 120-pound, you know, freshman, you know. And so, but the fact that he's playing with another freshman in Onyeka who have literally zero varsity experience, and then Eli, as a junior, this was his first varsity year. So we're playing with 2 guys that have varsity experience in Jello and Zoe. And we're in this game with 3 guys, 2 freshmen, no varsity experience, and we're competing to play number 1 in the nation.
It's just absolutely insane. And like, to finish up the season, what was the national championship game? Who was that against?
That was against De La Salle.
How'd that go?
So
obviously, well, you won, but
that was an interesting game too, because for the first time in the whole season, we were down at half. So we were down 2 at half, and then we ended up winning by 20.
Okay.
Yeah.
So awesome, you know, amazing season. Kind of after it, obviously still more going on. You're the Balls Life All-American coach. What, like, to be selected for that, was that special?
Yeah, I just one more opportunity to coach Lonzo with guys like Miles Bridges was on the team, and, you know, just to see where he's at with, you know, LaMelo basketball. It's just a reminder that the world of basketball is so small, you know. And so, you know, it just is a humbling thought to make sure that you do things the right way, you know. And I think that's been the one key, you know, for me, is I've always just tried to do things the right way and not shortchange, because I know at the end of the day, like, if you don't, it'll come back and haunt you at some point.
And that's absolutely incredible. I mean, a bunch of accomplishments for that. Now, notoriously, LeVar Ball obviously is known, at least in the media realm, it could be hard to, coach his son. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't sound like you really had to deal with any too much. Was there ever?
No, there were a lot of episodes of, arguments and disagreements and, conversations and so that was a process as well. And, the last year, fortunately, when you win every single game, there's nothing to complain about, right? So, but the thing about that season was we were ranked #1 in the nation, or like early after like week 2 or 3 of the high school season. And there was just a lot of pressure in itself, because if we end up 34-1, that year would have been considered a failure. That's how we saw it. And so here we are having to literally win every single game, make sure that we try to win every single game. Because if we win out, we have control over our destiny. Like, we're #1 in the nation. There's no question about it, And so I just knew that would have been a big regret had we have lost one game. And there was a handful of games where we could have literally lost. And, just the pressure of some of those games was, it could have been overwhelming. But, the best thing that we did was we try to just say, we just got to focus on one day at a time. And that was the focus of our season, just one day at a time.
So navigating LeVar Ball, eventually over time it became easier as you guys won more games, essentially?
Yeah, essentially. I think we initially had a great relationship, and then there were definitely some ups and downs, but at the end of the day, we just knew that we wanted the best for the boys, and he knew that, he knew I didn't have any ill intentions, selfish intentions, and so that's why I knew that he would stick it out with me. And, it ended up working out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, national championship, that will do it. Yeah. Now, and was it directly after this season you leave Chino Hills, or was there one where it was right
directly after?
Directly after. So obviously that was a big surprise to a lot of people. Yeah. It seemed pretty straightforward what you said. It was just a family, or was there any other reason?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing was, I lived 40 miles from the school, and my wife and I had our second child, and there were some complications. There was a lot of, physical challenges, for her. And, it was kind of it was the most difficult decision I had to make career-wise. I wanted to be there for Onyeka. I wanted to be there for LaMelo. Jello was going to be a senior. Eli was going to be a senior. Cameron already left to Damien, but we had guys that were with me from day one, and I wanted to be there for them. And it just came down to, like, somebody was going to have to sacrifice, my family or the players. And it was, like I said, the most difficult decision I ever had to make. And, even looking back, I wish things could have been different, And in that moment, I just thought to myself, my family's had to sacrifice every single year, and they've never asked me to change, and I just I just felt like I owed it to my family.
I mean, family first. I mean, at the end of the day, that's probably the best call. And, I mean, you're still heavily involved in basketball here in Southern California. I mean, I know you work with SCA closely, Southern California Academy, for those of you who don't know, which most people should know at this point. And talk about, another thing as far as working with these and player development is something you've, kind of emphasized is pretty important in Southern California. Talk about your role with it, role within the development of youth basketball, specifically in Southern California basketball.
Yeah, well, I would first want to mention, I went to Fairfax. I thought going to Fairfax would have been – I thought I was done with coaching after Chino Hills. I looked for jobs and opportunities that were outside of basketball, closer to home. And the only calls I was getting was more coaching and basketball, right? And so – I took the Fairfax job knowing that, if it was closer to home, and it's just a a great program, you know. And, you know, I thought that it would have, the distance would have relieved a lot of different challenges, but, you know, basketball is always going to be basketball, especially when you're coaching. And so that's when, after 3 years, you know, fortunately, we were able to win a city championship. And, you know, I think we finished like number 22 in the nation with a bunch of, you know, city kids. And that was a huge accomplishment, where one of our seniors, you know, went from LA to the Ivies. You know, he's at Dartmouth right now. And 4 of our, you know, 5 players ended up with Division I scholarships. So that was a huge accomplishment. You know, just to be a part of that was just amazing. One of my, you know, proudest achievements as a coach. And so that was something that I continue to want to do, which is help kids and players achieve their goals of playing college. Because I felt like I didn't have my fair shake when I was a player. Mm-hmm. And so, and I know the disappointment, I know, you know, if you're not taking the right avenues, you may miss opportunities, you know. And there's a lot of talented kids that don't have resources, kids that do have resources, you know, whatever, you know, the situation may be, they still need to be given the proper avenues to make it, you know. And a lot of times in this industry, they're not told the most accurate thing. And so after Fairfax, I just knew that that's something that I wanted to continue.
Because, I mean, so Fairfax kind of helped inspire, I mean, your own personal experience with not necessarily getting enough exposure or help to get to the next level, but also taking that extra sense of pride that, I mean, you had a player go to Ivy League. I mean, straight out of Fairfax to Ivy, I mean, Dartmouth, it doesn't get much better than that. So helping the kids get not only to the next level in the basketball sense, but just to on the next level just from an education sense.
Absolutely. I mean, you talk about kids that literally sacrificed going an hour and a half on the bus. You know, my experience at Chino Hill, I'm glad, I really appreciate the differences for me as a coach, which when I was at Chino, it was just so easy to get to school. So easy. And you don't even think about it. And I don't wonder if kids ate breakfast or not. You know, I knew that they were taking care of it. And when we got to practice, we could just focus on basketball. But when I got to Fairfax, transportation was always an issue. I always wonder if kids were going to make it on time, you know. And then I would wonder if, you know, certain individuals would have the means to eat, you know. And so every single day, you know, every single game, one of my biggest responsibilities was to make sure that everybody was properly, you know, that they had the proper nutrition.
You've had this innate thing to help those athletes from the beginning. That's been very clear. But then now that's where mostly you're dipping your toe. I mean, a little bit of everything, helping the youth basketball in Southern California. You have a program, Converge Basketball.
Right.
You want to talk about that a little bit? Yeah,
so Converge was birthed out of my years at Fairfax, where, you know, my principal at Fairfax, you know, encouraged me to run a program. And there was a local school that the coach was doing the same thing. He was coaching his high school and also had a youth program. And so when I talked to him, you know, just the challenges of collecting like monthly dues wasn't very appealing to me. And so I just thought to myself, what if I did the fundraising myself and provided kids an opportunity to get, you know, proper training, workouts, play games, and things like that. So Converge was, you know, birthed out of my years there, and you know, just the opportunity to bring the right resources with the right passions and the right people together. And you know, at that point, when you do that, you can have a convergence where an individual can end up being in the best possible, you know, space.
And another one we've worked with and that you are a heavy part of is Bring Your Game.
Yep.
It's another one. What do you? How is that going so far?
Yeah, that's been great. We had an event where we provided a platform for unsigned seniors, and we had 110 kids from all over Beaumont, San Diego. You know, kids from all over. But you know, for me, it's just an opportunity to just help these kids whether it's, you know, have an opportunity to play or have an opportunity for exposure, just to give kids an opportunity. That's what I want to be about, you know, where they may have never had an opportunity, you know, prior. That's what I want to provide for these kids in the next generation.
And that's a very, you know, important thing. Another thing that you've like kind of added onto your resume, but another thing that you're doing that might arguably be the most important is you're trying to really get a voice for Asian Americans, Korean Americans. I mean, in Los Angeles is the biggest population of Koreans in America, correct?
Right.
Talk about kind of what that process has been like and what you kind of have set out for the future to help make that happen.
No, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to share about that. So again, you know, just like the mission of Converge, giving opportunities where people don't necessarily have the opportunities. You know, it's unbelievable that LA and OC, we don't have an established Korean American basketball program. There's club teams, one or two, you know, here and there, but to have a program that's established for Korean American kids just to go to, it's non-existent. And in the past, it used to be the church leagues, where everybody, you know, Korean American would go and play, and that's when you would find who the best players were. But you know, you look at every other, you know, minority group, they have established basketball programs. So I attended a basketball clinic at an Armenian organization a couple years ago, and I found out that they have 1,000 youth just in their one chapter that participate in basketball. And so for an organization to provide that for their community was just, I just saw so many benefits. And so that's the mission I'm on right now, is I want to create a platform for Korean Americans, starting with the youth and building up, you know, from there. So just real quick, what I did was I contacted the president of a Korean Basketball Association that has annual men's basketball tournaments. And so from there, I want to go and reach out to each of these major cities and help establish youth programs at each major city.
Obviously have full faith in you looking at going forward, and the Korean basketball and just representation for Korean Americans in general is obviously a big thing on your agenda and going to be largely tied to your personal and professional life going forward.
Yep.
But on the other sense, family wise, how's the future looking there? Everything good?
Yeah, no, I just celebrated. We just celebrated my daughter's first birthday, our fourth child's first birthday, and.
Was that yesterday?
That was yesterday.
Yesterday. So, yeah, we originally had scheduled maybe potentially do Thursday.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, it's my daughter.
Yeah.
Which is also my brother birthday. Happy birthday, Cameron.
No, it was, I appreciate you guys being flexible. But family's great. You know, we got our hands full with 4 kids. And, you know, we have some potential hoopers. But, you know, again, my goal is to provide opportunities for them. You know, so everything I'm doing, I want to create a better future for them.
Beautiful. Can't really ask for much more than that. Perfect dad answer. Perfect family answer. Before I let you get out of here, I mean, it's March. We have to talk about it a little bit. March Madness going on. First day just happened. Only 161 perfect brackets left.
Wow.
St. Petersburg, knocked out Kentucky. Yep. Give us some early thoughts and then maybe talk about who you think might win the whole thing.
Yeah, you know, it's March Madness is, you know, it is what it is, right? And so I think there has to be a couple more surprises. You know, I'm pulling for USC because, you know, my former Fairfax point guard, Ethan Anderson, is playing. They were in trouble right before we got onto this podcast. But, you know, I kind of want Duke to have a nice run because of Coach K. And just the story is set up to where the Final Four, I believe, that in Chicago, where that's his hometown. And it'd be nice for him to, you know, go back to where he started, you know, and I think a lot of people are rooting for that, and what he's meant to basketball, college basketball, you know, international basketball, you know, I think people really are rooting for that to happen, and you know, the Zags stand in the way. They look really good, you know, so you want these
storybook endings. Yep. I mean, it would line up perfectly. They have a good squad.
Yeah.
Although Mark Few is due as well. He's had some tough endings.
Exactly.
Not only do you want Duke, are you believing in Duke to win it, or?
I want them more than I believe, to be honest with you. But that's what that's the beauty of sports, because when you get down to it, and, I do believe that Duke has the capabilities to pull it out. But, that's the beauty of sports again, and, they have 3 freshmen that they're relying on, and, are they able to step up, and make a storybook ending for their coach and for themselves.
Well, it's called March Madness for a reason. Yeah. Madness, it could happen. But, I mean, you're kind of looking for the storybook ending for Coach K because you recognize his greatness, because you are also a great coach and a national champion, Coach of the Year. We just want to really thank you for hopping on with us today.
No, thank you guys so much. You guys are doing great things here, and whatever I can do to support.
Oh, yep. Absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And that's going to do it for us. Cue music. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram at Cannon Sports, TikTok at Cannon Sports Official, and of course, cannonsports.com for all your sporting goods needs. Thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next time.